Great challenge. Don't you dare, ref. That's, he got the ball. Great challenge. Don't you dare, ref. That's, he got the ball.
Alrighty, everybody. We're coming in hot. Twitter Reacts time. Here we go, baby. It's definitely just another bad night as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, really. It's just, I think, sadly, a lot of this, everybody, has to do with just the way that maybe Ange Postecoglou has decided to maybe respond, to a lot of the Spurs fan base. I just don't know if it's really helped the situation at all here. It's going to be difficult to get through this one. We have a lot of spicy stuff to get through, and we're going to try our best to give our responses, give our reactions to it. But there is sadly a lot to be talked about, especially when it comes to Ange Postecoglou and his reaction to the Spurs fan base. I see already some people in the house. Just want to welcome you in. Smash the like button if you are joining us. We have Stateside Footy in with us. Future's bright, future's slowly white. Aussie, Coys. Thank you, guys. And like I said just the other day, so many members, it feels like, that have been with us. So we really do appreciate you all. But Dave, I think we just got to get this one started. We're going to start off with kind of just the juicy stuff, as I was saying to Dave, in the back end. And then somehow, some way, thanks to my own terrible sense of humor and dark sense of humor, I did actually find some funny stuff to bring up maybe towards the end here. But Dave, this is one of them. And this has started to break, kind of the internet already. I mean, the cupping of the hands and the video of that was breaking, the Spurs internet. But this is even further footage that we were able to get. And Hotspur reports saying this video speaks 1,000 words. The wave, the ear, the cup, the arrogance. Wow, no getting out of this one, Ange. I think it's the fact that he did actually do the wave afterwards, right? Because he tried to defend, the cupping of the ears. We'll touch on that in a second, because I found that to be, again, a bit childish from him to sort of try to defend it as if, he didn't mean it that way. But I think this is sort of the, what do you call it? Like the in a murder mystery case, Dave, this is sort of like, the dagger. This is sort of, the gun, that,
the smoking gun, isn't that what they call it?
Smoking gun, Dave. The fact that he's doing the sarcastic wave as well.
I mean, look, it's just not ideal. Look, from an individual standpoint, from Postecoglou's standpoint as an individual, you take criticism, you give it back. I can understand that. However, put it into the context of a football club, and you as a manager need to get the fans, the players, the staff, and the ownership on board with you. It's the wrong thing to do. He's completely misreading the room. Look, I spoke a couple of weeks ago after one, and I said, stop clapping back at fans and clap back when you win, when you've actually achieved something. And here he is again. We ended up losing the game. The reality is now, Jack, there's a clear rift developing now between the fans and Postecoglou, which is not good. And somehow he's done the impossible. All the focus coming into this season was on Daniel Levy. He's managed to turn that around and put all the focus on himself. I would argue he's probably more hated right now in the fan base than what Daniel Levy is to a large degree, which I don't think is a good situation. I don't understand how he's managed to put himself in that situation to a large degree. Even if you are losing games, what you don't do is clap back at fans, the disgruntled fans and stuff like that. You keep them on side to a large degree. Keep the focus on the ownership, because at the end of the day, by doing that, that would have helped him in the long run in terms of getting what he needs in the transfer market and stuff like that. But also, I think we're getting to the point now, Jack, where there's a huge risk that Postecoglou's relationship with the fans and the confrontations with the fans could actually harm Tottenham Hotspur's relationships with the supporters long term. And I don't think it's doing anyone any good right now at this football club. With the manager and the fans at each other's throat, the manager and the owners at each other's throat constantly. It's not doing anyone the world of good. No, we're seeing is a club that is just sinking, under all this mess. And it's not good enough moving forward. But where I get really disappointed with Postecoglou, though, Jack, is, he keeps speaking about showing resilience through adversity, resilience through tough times. He's the one cracking under pressure. Yeah. And if he's the one cracking under pressure, and he's supposed to be setting the tone and the standard of resilience and showing everyone else how you get through the tough times by doing that, I mean, what chance have we got of getting out of this, honestly?
So well said there. And, this is then probably a good tweet to bring up here, because, like you say, he sort of acts like he has this tough skin, but in fact, I don't think he really does. Tottenham manager Ange Postecoglou, and whether he's affected by the abuse from the fans. No, I am fine. I don't get affected by that. I will continue fighting my whole career. People want me to say something that will change the mood of the fans, but I've never done that. My job is the performance of the team. I get that they are frustrated and angry, but at the same time, I understand the criticism towards me. But if anyone looked at the players and said they aren't trying, then I'm sorry, they are not watching the right game. Two things from this, Dave. I think the part where he says people want me to say something that will change the mood of the fans, but I've
No.
never done that. Technically, I mean, you can probably try to help yourself a bit more, Ange, by, not alienating yourself further, from the fan base. It's not like you need to, sing, sort of wishful words and
But
happy clap for them, but he's sort of acting like, there's nothing he can say that would alleviate the situation with the fans. But there probably are some things that you can say, that would make it a bit better. And then the other part there about, the players trying or not, I actually want to get into that. It seems like you want to come in on that first part.
yeah, just on the first part. I sort of disagree with you to a degree, Jack.
Okay,
Look,
yeah.
I'll be honest, where I'm at, I don't want to hear, there's nothing them players or the manager can say to me, or even the ownership can say to me right now, that's going to change my mood. Absolutely nothing. James Maddison done an interview after the game yesterday, and he even said, to be fair, I don't even think the fans want me doing this interview. There's nothing I can say that's going to, change
True.
their mind and stuff like that.
True.
We're not looking for anybody to come out and say anything. We're just looking for improvements on the pitch, results on the football pitch, and we're not getting them. No, there's nothing anyone can come out and say that's going to change my mind, your mind, or anyone else's mind out there on what's gone on this season. Like we're fair. We take into account the injury crisis and everything else, how much it can really affect you. Look at City's levels this year compared to usual. We understand all that, but at the same time, we're still not getting enough out of it.
No, that's actually true, because I am going to bring up, Madison's comments. I actually thought Madison handled the interview quite well, and that he understood he understood the vibe. He kind of read
Credit
the
in the
room.
bank there for me.
Do you feel like I just think he read the room, and actually you're right, because I was about to criticize Ange for saying, oh, like maybe you could say something that could, make this a bit easier. But Madison sort of came out and said, to be honest, I don't think there is anything you can say right now that would make things easier. So that's actually a fair point that you're making.
This is where I think Postecoglou's missing it, though, Jack. We don't want to hear anything. We also don't want to see you, every opportunity you get, or any time a fan says something to you or is getting under your skin, you're reacting. Just stop reacting.
Yeah.
That's all we want. Just stop reacting to it. We're entitled to be frustrated. We pay so much money to follow this club, whether you're in the UK and you follow all around the UK and across Europe, whether you're a worldwide fan and you pay for all your sports channels to be able to sit down and watch this football club week in, week out, 3 times within 7 days, every single week. We just stop reacting. Just accept that we're fans of this football club. We pay a lot of money to support this football club, and with the high ticket prices that people pay, etc., you're going to hear frustrations.
Just also want to say, everybody, go ahead again.
Sorry, just on the second part of that tweet, I think we wanted to touch on that as well, just quickly.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they tried or not? Personally, I think they did try last night, and I think that's sadly, maybe a further question than of the manager, because I think the players were actually trying their heart out, and especially that first half, like they were defending for themselves. Sonny, who I think we've criticized a lot this season, I don't think he still did the best job in terms of working back and helping out his defender, but I think he did a better job than usual. Wilson Odebear certainly worked a lot harder than I've ever seen Brennan Johnson do on that right wing. Bentoncourt, again, kind of looks all over the place at times, but I did see him getting stuck in on plenty of occasions to make last-minute challenges. Thought Romero actually, again, sort of showed that he can sort of be that guy that's willing to put in the crunching challenges, willing to make the last-minute saves. Vicario was shaky, but you could tell that, he was into it. He was trying to get himself back together. I don't know. Like, the players, we could certainly question their ability at times and their quality, but I don't know if you can question the effort levels. That's me personally. And there are a few tweets on that people said, like, oh, like, these players just aren't trying. And I heard people on Talk Sports saying these players just aren't trying. And it's like, I get that that's a common response usually for a bad performance, but I don't know if that's the case this time, which makes me ask further questions of the manager. Really.
Look, I agree with you. I think there has been games at times this season where you can question maybe the hunger and desire going into it. But, I would argue, since we've got a lot of our players back, it's not a case that these guys aren't trying. Like, even against Fulham, first half didn't go well. Second half, we were camped in their half. We just don't have the quality to put them to bed, Jack. And that's the big problem. Like, they are trying. But when you don't have the quality, that's where tactics come into question, players' efforts come into question, managers not knowing what they're doing and stuff. At the end of the day, it's something that I've been trying to hammer home for a long time now.
Yeah.
Quality at this level matters.
I just want to also welcome in, as well as Spurs Graham, Spurs GCTV, Scotty Hynum, Darren Johnson, stateside footy, saying as well, quite frankly, I don't want to hear from Ange, Levy, or any one of these players. It feels like empty, hollow words at this point. The only thing that matters at this point is playing Tottenham Hotspur football. No excuses anymore. Tyler as well saying, surprised Levy hasn't taken this opportunity to sack him to get some backing by the fans.
He's
The way you look at it, Tyler, maybe it's the other way around, where Levy, by keeping Ange in the job, is, distracting people from, sort of drawing the attention back towards him. We know that everyone's going to eventually just start throwing the daggers back towards Levy again. But if he does keep Ange in the job, we've said this almost like a couple of months ago, Dave and I, when Ange was under pressure, by keeping Ange in the job, Levy, in a way, distracts people from the real problems at the football club, personally.
The thing is as well, he's not going to sack him until our Europa League fate is decided. If he was going to sack him, he had 2.5 weeks to do it and bring in a replacement. The fact that they didn't do that, that tells me, if I'm just trying to read between the lines from what the club are maybe thinking, they ain't going to do it until this Europa League campaign is over. But also, like Jack's alluded to, and like I said a few minutes ago, all the speculation, all the focus coming into this season was on Daniel Levy. All of it. Yeah. Now, it's all on Ange Postecoglou. If you're Daniel Levy, why would you sack him? Because I can tell you now, the minute he gets rid of him, that's when people will start talking about what I've been trying to relay all along. Tottenham don't hire bad managers, they recruit badly. The amount of manager turnover since Poch, all this is going to be highlighted by pundits, media, etc. once Ange is out of the fire line, because Ange is the main focus right now, and that's another part of why, if you're an owner, you know your season's more or less over. Keep him there for as long as you can to a certain degree. Use the Europa League as your disguise. You're going to wait till the fate in that is decided and take the heat off yourself.
That's why I kind of... Yeah, sorry, cut you off at the end.
No, that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's why I titled it Overreaction or Writing on the Wall. Is there an overreaction to wanting to sack him now when we haven't even played this Europa League game yet? Or is the writing on the wall with the Europa League game, right? Is it just we kind of know the outcome, in a sense? So that's just kind of the big question mark with people. And I could take either argument on that. Future's bright, future's lily white. Good to see you in the house. Thank you for supporting the channel as a member. Archer as well. Thanks for supporting the channel, my friend. Maisie's Adventure. Luke James. Artist T saying, morning, guys. Rainy day here. It's like we're in Seattle. Maybe it's like I'm in New York then, because it's a bright sunny day over for me. It's going to be a bright sunny weekend. It's crazy. Michael G. Kelly, good to see you as well. Appreciate your support, my friend. Just a harmless potato, the best spud around. And Glenn Cornwall. How's Cornwall doing, my friend Glenn?
Cornwall, lovely place. Lovely place to live.
Now let's get into some more juiciness here. Lily White Rose saying yet another flaw with Ange's lying / gaslighting / doubling down response was in cupping his year is that he assumes our first reaction in the away end to scoring a goal at the bridge is to look to him. Can you interpret it that way, Dave, too? Like maybe, the fact that Ange is sort of disregarding it entirely, it's like, oh, I just want the fans, to, get up for the goal. And it's like, well, if the fans, they kind of were alluding to something else. I don't know. It's just maybe that's not a bad point, actually, from Lily White.
What I'm going to say here is, right, I actually, first of all, so much respect for Lily White Rose and a lot of the content that he does and the way he keeps fans up to date with a lot of what's going on at youth level. Absolutely tremendous work by John. So big yourself up. However, I'm going to make the argument. It's hard to argue it's not their first reaction. I'm not being funny, but, you see people straight... How does that clip come about then? How did it capture that clip if their first reaction isn't to turn to Ange Postecoglou to see what he's going to do? And I again,
a lot of
I
people
love Johnny.
Film everything, like Johnny.
I love Johnny, but Johnny's constantly got his phone on Ange Postecoglou this season, by all of his images and stuff. So I get what Lily White Rose is saying. Of course, our first reaction is going to be celebrating and jumping, but there are people sitting there with their phone on them.
Good point. How could 20 losses this season be an overreaction, Jack? I mean, Michael, I'm in your boat, man. I'm just, trying to toe the line, with different opinions on this one, with at least the title. But Dave and I certainly have my own opinions. Jack Pitbrook saying Postecoglou cups his hands to his ear and waves at the Spurs fans after Sarr scores from distance. They had booed the decision to take Bergvall off for Sarr early on. And I think that was when they said, you don't know what you're doing, to him, is when he took off Odebear and when he took off Bergvall. Personally, I approved of the Bergvall decision. I didn't think Bergvall was making that much an impact at that stage of the game that, it maybe did call for someone like Pop Sarr to come in. I did say, though, I didn't think he needed to take off Odegaard personally. I think he needed to take off Sonny or also maybe even Solanke as well, just because the forward line was just doing so terribly at that stage that it just needed something freshened up. And keeping Sonny on, I just thought was a big mistake. And to a degree, even keeping Solanke on, I thought was a mistake as well. But
No,
yeah, that's where. So that is the context to where the fans were booing him. And that's why the fans were singing, "You don't know what you're doing," because they did the same to Nuno. They did the same to Nuno when he took off Lucas Moura, right? And it's to say that this is an Ange thing isn't the case. Like, fans do this in football. I've seen it, with other managers that have been under pressure. It's a common reaction. I don't even think it's that unique to Spurs fans. It's when people are already upset with the manager and then they see him make yet again, and Ange has done this before, a bad substitution, they will call him out for it. It's just how it is.
What I will say is I'd love to know is the booing reaction to Brendan Johnson coming on for Odegaard or Bergvall for Sarr. But what I will say is, I just hope that the players realise that it is more towards what Postecoglou's doing and not the players coming on the pitch. Because honestly, I'm quite surprised the reaction that Papa Sarr's got this year. You're looking at a kid that he's not out there at all these events taking in balloons, everything else. He's a guy that just sits there. He's young, he's sort of shy to a large degree and just gets on with it. But, what he came on and done last night,
yeah.
He won that ball. He ended up scoring that goal. But that's why I've always said, look, don't get me wrong. I think Bergvall's been absolutely brilliant. But in terms of getting around, breaking up, playing, in terms of offering a goal threat, Sarr is better than Bergvall right now. I'm sorry to say it, but that's just my opinion. It's not the first time I've seen Sarr pull the trigger from the edge of the box. I managed to find the back of the net and stuff like that. And if it is a reaction to Sarr coming on for Bergvall, I'm genuinely quite perplexed at that, because I actually think Sarr is a player that should actually get a lot more love from Spurs fans. You don't see him out doing interviews. You don't see him out putting himself in front of the press, trying to explain shit away. You don't see him out there doing anything he shouldn't when we're losing. From the perspective that I get, the guy just goes home, gets up, goes into training the next day, and that's all he seems to do. And I'm quite surprised about the reaction this guy's getting, actually, Jack.
Yes. He has the propensity to score big goals, Pop Montsar. It seems like people want to forget that, though, at times. Big D, member for 15 months, Flat Cat member. Once again, everybody, the member milestones are just very, very, very humbling for us and very, very generous. And he's saying, feels like 15 months since Spurs didn't ruin my day.
No, feels like 15 months since we won a game.
Seriously, Big D. But like I said, people are welcome at this stage when things are all over the place, things are a mess. Dave and I, we will continue to say people are welcome to feel differently to us. People are welcome to have their own takes, their own sort of priorities of, where the blame lies, that sort of thing. But I just want to say the fact that there are so many people that just continue to support us, memberships, and just sticking around with us. It's very, very nice. And it's very humbling to us because, we don't claim to have the right answers every single time. And you guys, still sit here, have back and forths. And I'd like to think that this is a good ground. This is a good sort of environment for different takes, different opinions without anybody feeling like they're going to get casted out and thrown away or things like that. So I appreciate you guys as well as you, Big D, my friend. Yeah. And then he also says, Dave, would you sack Ange at this stage?
Yeah, look, where I'm at now, Big D, is...
He probably means right now, this moment, I assume.
Yeah, no, but look, just to explain it, look, coming into the summer, I highlighted the bad transfer window we had and the problems it was going to cause us, and I tried my best. And at the end of the day, look, I've given Ange Postecoglou every opportunity, and I mean every opportunity to turn this round. I haven't been one that's been quick to turn on him and jump on the bandwagon and follow the crowd. I have given this guy every opportunity. But honestly, the last few weeks, the amount of times he's clapping back at supporters and clapping back at fans, I'm not going to lie, it's pissing me off. And then I'm done with it now. Look, I've given the guy every opportunity. Look, I maintain, I don't think everything that's gone on this season is all on him. There is massive parts of the blame that need to go elsewhere. I don't even think Ange Postecoglou is the biggest problem at Tottenham Hotspur, and I've said this all along. I don't think managers have been the biggest problem at Tottenham Hotspur, but the reality is I have given the guy so much rope. I have given him so much time to try and turn this around, and it's not, and it's getting to the point now where We need goals to go and win games. We just do not have the quality up front. So they're not going to be able to pull Ange Postecoglou out of this mess just because the quality ain't there to go and win the games. Then I look at him, calling for adversity, resilience through toughness. And then every opportunity he gets, he's clapping back at everybody else. He strikes to me as a man that's losing it. But again, we've done this to Conte. He lost it. Jose Mourinho lost it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This
Fair
isn't
point.
the first manager we've done it to. But I'm at the point now, Big D. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. I'm done. I've given him every opportunity, man.
Paolo Moratti just also pointing out, saying Sarr has been our best player in the Europa League, especially. And Dave and I have made that point a few times. In the cup competitions, he's actually been very good for us. Lily White Rose, 34 points after 30 games. Just pathetic. Yeah, I think that's where a lot of people just start to get fed up. That's just hard to stick with.
It's sad, though,
points,
Jack.
It's relegation form, as people have been saying for a long time.
When I think about it, though, Jack, it is sad because when this guy first came in, I think he was the most successful manager after 10 or 11 games in the Premier League to ever take the Premier League since it started. He's got the best points return. Now, all of a sudden, he's leaving as one of the worst Premier League managers ever, especially at Tottenham Hotspur. It's just like, we are circus anyway.
Well, Henry Winter, this was the tweet that blew up, Dave. Impossible to tell what Spurs are supposed to be under Ange Postecoglou now. No identity, no unity, minimal attacking threat, players losing discipline. They've got some good players, but are just drifting now under Ange. Fans have clearly had enough of him, too. It's Europa League or bust. And I just think, that's a good summary of what's happening. But where do you disagree?
Yeah, I disagree with Henry Winter. I think, look, I hate to say
he's an Arsenal fan too, by the way. So,
yeah. Well, no wonder why I disagree with him. But I hate to say it, Jack, and I don't want to keep banging on and harping on about it. But when we had Harry Kane, I remember a lot of the arguments were, we don't want to keep relying on one individual. We can't be that team, etc. Maybe he was our identity on the football pitch. I'm not being funny, but maybe he was our identity on the pitch. You can sit there and say we've got decent players to a certain degree, but we're the ninth richest club in the world without one genuine world-class player in our football team.
Forward line, especially.
And that forward line, you sell the best striker in the world, and then you turn to all the relegation clubs and clubs fighting relegation and go, oh, how can we piece this together nice and cheap? No, I'm sorry, you're not having what Henry Winter's saying. Stick to Arsenal. You've got bigger problems. Gabriel's out for the season. Go and cry.
And then as well, we're going to take the context here of Ange saying, we just scored. I wanted to hear them cheer. Ange Postecoglou says it's incredible how things are interpreted after being asked about cupping his ears to the fans. And this is then a good segue on to, and then also maybe just for the sake of it, this made the thumbnail, Dave. Ange Postecoglou when we equalize against bottom of the league Southampton at home on Sunday. Dave, the super chat here from Artist T, I think is a good segue then to Ange sort of trying to defend, the cupping of the years. Artist T saying it would be one thing if he had the CV or if we were winning games, but not only are we abysmal right now, the goal was disallowed and it made himself look like a clown. Even worse that he also doubled down and has lied twice. He didn't go to the away fans after the game. If managers and players in Europe can face angry ultras, he can face Tottenham fans. I agree with parts of this from Artist T personally. I do think.
What parts do you agree with?
I agree with the fact that I've said this before to you, Dave. I do think Ange has to be the bigger man sometimes, with the criticism, and he is supposed to be a professional manager at a high level. I think people are mistaken to think that Jose Mourinho, Conte, Nuno weren't called, at some point, maybe bad names or, terrible things, and they probably had to take the high road and just sort of ignore it. Believe people called Nuno terrorist football, right, when he didn't even play a game yet at Tottenham Hotspur, and people were happy to chuck him under the bus very, very quickly. But Nuno didn't end up having such a huge blow up or anything like that, with the fans, and hasn't done that sort of mocking. And that's where I kind of am at with Ange, where I just think, as much as I think in regular life, regular situations, 100%, I think you can defend yourself, you can sort of try to stick up for yourself, but you are being paid a ridiculous salary, and you are being paid to sort of be the professional image of the club, and you are paid to be that ambassador of the club and its image. And I just don't think Ange Postecoglou does himself any favors consistently in that regard. And the constant clapping back towards fans is just making himself, more of an alienated figure in and around the football club, but also with his own fans. And, the thing is that when he starts winning games, it's going to even be, if he does start winning games again, it will be hard for him to get any sort of buyback from these fans because he's really distanced himself from them. And I just think he doesn't help himself, doesn't do himself any favors with this sort of thing. And also, as well, that's just sort of trying to explain it, like, oh, well, this is what I meant by it. Like, I think we can all tell by his face and what he's saying that, he did mean something different by it. He was trying to sort of mock them and he was trying to sort of clap back towards them. And the fact that he didn't, the fact that he tried to sort of lie about that, I think is, again, just someone who's a very rattled figure right now at the moment.
No, look, all signs all signs, are pointing to that he is starting to buckle underneath the weight of expectancy and pressure. But we've also got to remember, he hasn't experienced something like this in his career before.
True.
He's usually he's used to winning games of football. He's used to winning trophies, competing for trophies. He's used to, fans adoring him. He's used to having good relationship with their fan bases wherever he's been. You look at the Celtic fans; they absolutely love the guy. He's not used to this situation, and you never really know how you're going to react to something until you're in that situation. And look, he hasn't reacted well to it here. The writing's on the wall. It's not a matter of, it's not even a case of if, it's just a case of when at this point. And it's sort of like, he hasn't handled it well at all. But like I keep reiterating, let's not pretend we haven't been in this under previous managers before, where fans and managers, Tottenham and Nuno, these managers are leaving Tottenham and they're not as bad as we are making them out to be and stuff like that. And in terms of the CV, look, can understand what people are saying, but the reality is he's got trophies on his CV. I'm not being funny. When was our last trophy?
Yeah, I disagree.
You know what I mean? We come up the CV, but people in the same breath call for Areola. His CV is worse than Ange if you take into account that Ange has won where he's been.
I disagree with the CV part of Artist T's comment, but I do very much agree with the fact that it made it even worse that he just sort of doubled down and sort of acted like, it wasn't that, and that sort of thing. It's just like, dude, own up to it. It's like you are being a bit of a child in that case, in my opinion. Like, if you want to mock people and then you sort of are asked about it later and you're like, oh, that's not what I meant, like sort of thing. It's like, come on, man, like just own up to what you did. Like,
yeah.
And that's the whole point why you don't do that, because then people will catch it on camera and then they will ask you about it. And then you're not really going to be able to respond to that well, because you're going to have to double down and be really honest, be like, yeah, that's what I meant. I meant to clap back at the fans. And it's like, well, then, you've clearly lost the plot. So it's just, this is why Ange needs to avoid this sort of thing, because he just digs a deeper and deeper hole for himself. And that's where I'm agreeing with Artist T, really. And it's good to see you, my man. Henry Paolo Maratti saying Henry Winter's just chatting shit, lads. The whole no identity, no unity narrative is becoming tired. Factually, the players, in my opinion, did play for each other last night. They just weren't good enough on the day. And I kind of do agree with that from Paolo. Martin Knightsbridge, member for 20 months.
How's Spain?
He's back.
It's coming into peak season for you, my man.
We need some Estrellas. We need some espresso right now, Martin. Get them in. He's saying, afternoon, boys. Hope you're good. This is enough now. He is out of his depth, and to cup his ear to prove his point like a petulant child is his race. His race is now run. I think, I didn't even read your comment yet, Martin Knightsbridge. I think it is, comes across as a child to me at the end of the day. Like I said, I think a regular everyday life, certainly able to clap back at people, in these sort of type of situations. But when you are expected to be a professional, I don't think Ange Postecoglou is doing that right now. I think he is behaving like a child manager, to some extent, like a guy who's just far too rattled to be a professional manager at a Premier League football club, especially one of the size of Tottenham Hotspur.
Like, you can expect me or you to clap back, or people to clap back at us, but
we said this before. You and I show greater, like you and I show tougher skin than Ange does.
We try to
at times. We try to, but I don't know. That's the part that I don't know. Dave and I get called plenty of things. Dave and I have been clipped, and reacted to, and all these sort of stuff. And we don't dig, low. We don't try to, throw people under the bus. We just sort of ride the high road as much as we can at the end of the day. But we're not being paid nearly as much as Ange Postecoglou. We're also not trying to win games on a football pitch. We're just trying to give our opinions and our reactions to the everyday sort of roller coasters of this club. And I think that Dave and I at times have shown more thicker skin than than Ange Postecoglou really has. in
Here's
that
my
regard.
thing, though, Martin, as well. It's like, I'm not being funny. Like, when I've played, and, in general, from my experience watching football, usually that cup at the ears when you're running by the away fans, from or the the opposition fans when
To the
they've given you
opposition
stick
fans, yeah.
all game, chance all game, they've given you stick and you've buried them with a goal. That's when you usually do that. Not to your own fans. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Look, Martin, I'm done. Like I said, I'm
Yeah.
done with it. I can't keep sitting here watching him, have a pop at the fans all the time and stuff like that. He's just not doing himself any justice. Instead of filling in that hole that's been dug, he's just digging it out and making it deeper.
I am the storm that's approaching, saying pitch invasion if we beat Southampton, lads. Darren Johnson.
Getting that point.
Good to see you, Darren Johnson. Good to see Sean Daniel. I am the storm that's approaching. Brian Timlin as well. Thanks for supporting
Big
the
up,
channel,
Brian.
Timlin.
Sean E.J. Daniel, good to see you as well. And Rooty too, great to see you.
Football Confidential, Dave, just pointing out what you already brought up earlier. I don't know if we need to go deeper into it, but I think you said James Madison's gotten some credit back in the bank for you, to some degree. I think he just read the room well, is what I said to you by his interview. And also someone, I guess, had to do the interview for the players. And I think James handled it better than I've seen Hugo Lloris handle it, or I've seen Sonny handle it. Hugo Lloris and Sonny were, I think, far more media trained in that they would kind of just sort of be like, oh, we're going to come back better, next time, it's not the result that we wanted. James Madison actually said more or less a lot of the right things.
He said exactly what fans have been saying for ages. Look, in fairness, I don't think fans even want to hear what I have to say. They don't want me doing this interview. Brilliant.
Dave, did you get a chance to see Vicario sort of show his frustration? Did you take anything from that other than just a guy who's a frustrated figure like many of the players?
Yeah, look, these players, of course, are going to be pissed off with what's going on to a large degree, especially this sort of game. Look, it's frustration at the end. I'm not being funny. I don't mind seeing that sort of thing. It does show to me to a large degree that they care. What I don't want is see them standing out on the pitch, cupping them out, speaking to individuals, dicking around. I'd rather see this sort of frustration and actually show that it bloody hurts.
I'm in the same boat there. Ange hugging the halfway line at the end of the game. Chelsea 1-0 Tottenham. This was also, I think, a bit interesting to note. Check out Chris Cowan's page, please, everybody. But I think you can see certain players, being certain Spurs players, weren't that eager to walk towards him. Even Pedro Porro just sort of storming off the pitch there didn't really seem too happy to be shaking Ange's hands. I also saw, I think you can see this in just a second here, Mikey Moore, I think, sort of walks past him as well. We know that guy, from what we've heard, could be a frustrated figure around the club. And I guess the big indictment, of Ange is that he stayed as far away from pretty much the away fans as he could. Whereas, you do see James Madison as well as some others, make their way towards the Spurs fan base, as well as Christian Romero, sort of clapping the fans and making his way towards them. Pop Montessor, I believe, did as well. So
it's a tough
Dave,
one.
It's what did you make of this? With Ange, he does look like, again, a bit of just looks like an alienated man.
It's a tough one, Jack. It's a tough one. At the end of the day, look, them players should always go and applaud the effort that the away fans have made to get to any game. Should be the bare minimum. They should do that. But at the same time, you're going over there getting pelters. You've been over there already 20 times this season after defeats. You know what I mean? You know exactly what you're going to get. But I think at that point, you got to understand you are in a bit of a luxury position, not only in terms of your lifestyle, but, you're one of the lucky few, you're 1% in the world that's been able to become a professional footballer. And I think at some point, you've got to show some humility no matter what situation you're in and get over there and applaud the effort of the fans making their way down. At the same time, they're the same people that come out and ask fans to, applaud the effort of the players even when they're losing games and stuff like that. So as far as I'm concerned, we're dealing in fairness, which I like to deal with. It works both ways then.
Lily White Lab saying we have regressed so much. Ange Ball has always had its issues, but you could hang your hat on the fact that we'd play through the pressure with ease. We'd enter the final third constantly. We'd press like crazy and cause some high turnovers. There's literally none of that anymore, and that's not meant we're more defensively solid either. We basically still got all the fundamental issues with Ange Ball without the fun parts. It's so over, says Lily White Lab. I agree with some of that for the most part. My big thing with Ange is I really sympathize with him with the forward line. I just don't think there's any world-class players in him to sort of carry him through, some of these games to get him over the line. Because we do find ourselves, even when we aren't really that good going forward, we still do find ourselves in some good moments, to be able to probably at least get a good shot on target to challenge the keeper. And somehow we struggle to do that. It ends up just petering out for a
Honestly,
corner, or, player just gets dispossessed, makes the wrong decision. I just think, at some stage you need either figure out, better ways to then get them in better positions constantly, or you have to then shore up the defense and then just hope and pray that you will be able to take your chance at some point in the game. And it's just, I feel like we haven't been able to do either for some time now.
Look, 9 times out of 10, relegation teams, they struggle for goals. We're struggling for goals right now. I was surprised. I mean, we signed all of our players up front from teams fighting relegation, so you sign that, it correlates. Usually what you want to do is sign players from, if there is a good player out there at relegation team, sign him, bring him into your team. But make sure you've got other world-class players around them to drag them to that level. Not double down and go, we'll create a whole forward line from, all these relegation clubs, piece it together and hope it works. And we wonder why we're so dead going forward. I think it's 4 out of the last 7 games now we have failed to score a goal. And that's all of our problem. That is our big problem. Ange Postecoglou is known for scoring goals, Tottenham Hotspur have always been known for scoring goals. And right now, I'll be honest, I don't know where the next goal is going to come from. And that's our biggest problem right now. We can moan about everything else, but scoring goals and not replacing Harry Kane properly is the biggest problem in this football club.
Just a couple of them here. Richard Cracknell, this is looking like a very painful, spiteful divorce.
Yeah.
Lily White Rose, yeah, that's just cupping of the ears. I think more of that just kept getting re-clipped and clipped. We've all seen the cupping of the ears. Chris Collins saying, you don't know what you're doing. Tottenham fans boo and shout to Ange Postecoglou, Chelsea versus Spurs. I didn't, Sonny as well. I feel like the way he sort of went to Pop Matasar, I thought it was a little bit performative there, to sort of make it look like, he's trying to rally the team. Maybe I'm just being harsh and petulant at this stage, but I don't know. It's just, but yeah, there's the evidence if he needed it. And I think now, we can go on to just a bit of light humor. We'll get to some people in the chat here. And then after this, everybody, we will be doing, I actually think we've made pretty good time here for the most part. We will be doing a big up recap of the game. Take a look at the highlights. Take a look at some of the moments where Spurs could have done better, especially maybe the goal that we conceded. I know there was also some moments where Vicario put us under pressure in the initial minutes. We could also take a look at some of the attacks that Spurs had, whether we could have done better with some of those, all that sort of thing. So please.
It's going to be very few clips there.
Yeah, it might be an efficient show there too, Dave. Be an efficient day, for you and me. But follow us over to that. You help out the channel a ton, and it is something that we can do over there that we just can't do anywhere else at the end of the day. So it's, I think, a cool feature that you offer there. And then also tonight, there will be a fan show over on that platform just after the big up recap as well. So 2 back-to-back streams there. Please follow us over, grab yourself a drink, grab yourself something to eat, and join us for that. We'll do the fan show for something close to an hour. We did it before with some guys.
It's free for everybody as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Yeah, that's good to mention.
Yeah, it's free for everybody as well. And basically what it is, me and Jack will sit there for an hour, and it's open to everybody. We'll bring everybody on at once, whoever wants to come on, you'll all come on and just come on and have your say, speak it out.
Yeah. And then, we'll do our best to sort of manage the discussion, get everyone their own say on it. So we'll sort of act as not necessarily moderators, we'll have our own opinion, but, we will try to give everybody their chance on the floor, their chance on the mic, so to speak.
What I will say is the likes of Rooty Toop, always around, would love to hear someone like you come on. Future's bright, future's lily white. I am the storm approaching. Great name. Who else? Nomad, you're always around. Sean E.J. Daniel, Stateside Footy, I believe, is working, so he won't be able to pop on. Aussie Coys, Brian Timlin, SDFC Benny. And even if you disagree with us, don't be afraid to come on and tell us why you disagree with us,
We've said before on these fan shows, it is an opportunity for Dave and I to kind of shut up and just sort of let you guys, sort of give your opinion to a degree. Dan THFC, Poro should have punched that line out. Utterly ridiculous decision. It was.
I said that at the time.
Everyone.
I said that at the time as well. He should have whacked him with the flag.
Everyone was so mad at Poro for it. It went off the player twice. It literally bounced off the player twice. And I'm not making any excuses for the referee. That was not the reason I think we lost the game, but the referees, man, they were not making things any easier, on us. It felt like every decision, Dave, was just somehow a Chelsea, kind of favored one. Anytime a Chelsea player appealed, they got it. Anytime they fell over, foul given, it was insane. I think when we looked at the stats too, it's at 13 fouls that Spurs conceded to Chelsea 6. I think that's a damning indictment of, and I don't think Spurs were playing dirty or any means.
No.
I mean, we had more possession, I believe, at stages of that game than Chelsea did too. So it's just, I don't know. That's just the way I feel. I thought this was just very funny. 2.5 weeks piece comes to an end today, and it was a very good Succession clip, one of my favorite shows of all time. It's just a very good one to use there. Patty Power saying, when you blast another free kick straight into the wall.
I'm going to defend Madison on that one. Actually, that referee, that referee's a dick. By the way, every other game this season, when the free kick's given against Spurs, you see that foam spray out straight away. You do not go beyond that line. And you watch the referee. He takes massive strides when he's setting up a Spurs wall. For that Chelsea one, he took small strides. The wall, in my opinion, was only about 8 to 6 yards away rather than the actual 10, and then they started creeping and there was no line there. I actually going to defend Madison on that one, and in fairness, like, when you are taking free kicks, you need that wall to be that 10 yards away to give you time to get up and down. When they're creeping and the referee allows them to do it, very hard to get the fucking thing up and down on target.
How much of a dick was he being with the with the corners? Where every single time it was a Chelsea corner, he's getting involved, telling the Spurs players you can't hold on to them, you got to like disrupt it, that sort of thing. And then when it's a Spurs free kick in front of the opposition Chelsea goal, he doesn't do anything about the wall creeping forward. So again, I just know I thought Craig Pawson was just by no means any help to us the other night.
By the way, Dizzy Bell, just quickly, he says nothing to do with the ref. We're not good enough. No, look, I agree. We weren't good enough yesterday whatsoever. But I still maintain the likes of Michael Oliver, Craig Pawson, there's referees in this league that fucking hate Tottenham Hotspur and never give us the rub of the green. I'm not being funny, but I literally watched, free kicks given against Madison for pulling a player down. And then Chelsea players doing the exact same to us. Referees just going, play on. Even the Chelsea players were surprised that he was saying play on to them. Even they were surprised.
And they were getting the decisions all night. And even some of them, they just felt like, we're still even generous towards them. We're going to go as well to another funny tweet. Spurs manager cupping his ears to mock his own fans after his club scores, only for that goal to be immediately ruled out. Maybe the most Spursy thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it is.
I think Paddy Power is run simultaneously by a Spurs account and also an Arsenal account at the same time. Harry Scarf saying, do you get rid of Ange before Frankfurt? Doubt it will happen, but something needs to change if we want to win this competition. I think Big D sort of asked us, with that super chat, but thought it was a good question from Harry Scarf. Las Vegas, not sure if I agreed with this. This is, again, just sort of that case where things get so bad that people start to then blame the fans, saying, as fans, we have ask the question of why would any top manager or player want to manage or play for us? We call for heads of managers the second things go poorly. We trash our players in the first year with the club. We are as much of a problem as Ange or anyone else. I am not the ones making the decision on the football pitch. I'm not the one that's allowing the transfer budget. I'm not the one doing the transfers, doing the recruitment. I'm not the one who's even pouring the tea for the players before the game. I am simply watching the game from my couch and watching it along with you and everybody else. I am by no means as responsible for this as fucking Ange Postecoglou. I think people really lose the plot when they start saying shit like this, personally. And Dave knows this, I get really riled by this sort of thing because I think you just aren't thinking logically, as if I was the one that decided to sub off Odebear, during halftime or something like that. I just don't get it.
Look.
And I think people do this when things get so bad, you're just pointing the finger at every direction, and then you start to, sort of blame each other. And that's just the point for me. I get riled up by that.
Look, the reality is, right, does our frustration help? No, of course it doesn't. In an ideal world, you just want everyone to sit there and clap and applaud and, try and give everyone a lot of confidence. But the reality is, they're taking massive money out of the football club in their wages, and they're the only ones that can actually do something about our reputation on the football pitch. And I'm sorry, but we have every right to hold them to a high standard. If they're coming in and they're producing below standard, we've every right to call them out. I'd argue what's worse is what we were doing with the likes of Lo Celso. He scored 1 goal in a pre-season friendly and everyone's out there, Dave, sign the apology form. That's worse. That's absolutely worse, by allowing these guys to continue to stay here without putting the pressure on them and not performing. That's worse.
Philly 2109, good to see you in the house, Philly. How are you, my brother? Dizzy Bell, yeah, maybe there might be a bit of a delay between the stream and that because, yeah, I was trying to say quickly, like, I am by no means giving the ref the reason for why we lost that game. I'm just saying, do not make things any easier on us. Suffering had a funny tweet, Dave, saying we're the first team to ever receive a yellow for a VAR intervention where a foul wasn't even given initially.
Yeah.
Like they're not actually allowed to even do that. He's just randomly decided to give him a yellow anyways. And then Nigel O'Neill saying, imagine how ridiculous it is that the referee not only overruled himself, took 6 minutes to do it for what's supposed to be a clear and obvious decision, and then gave the player a booking for a challenge he thought wasn't even a foul from 10 yards away. Levels don't get much lower for us. I mean, this is what Dave and I have said again, not making an excuse, and the referees, hurting, like they make life more difficult for us, but they're not the reason we lost this game or anything. But it isn't a little insane, some of the decisions, last night, just how much bias there seems to be sometimes against us in these cases.
Yeah. Like it was both goals, like Chelsea's offside goal. We all seen it was offside. 3 Chelsea players offside from the initial image. It still took them hours to get to the decision. Then the Papamatasar one. So I'm not being funny, but this is something I've said about VAR all the time. When you slow it down, you're going to find what you're looking for. You have to take it into the context of the speed that the game's being played at. And I'm not being funny, but Papamatasar's challenge at that speed, it's not a bad challenge. It's not even a yellow card. It's a free kick. I'll agree with that. But it's not a yellow card. It's not, you shouldn't even be checking for a red there. And that's my big problem with it. And the fact it took him 6 minutes to overrule himself. But this is what pisses me off, Jack. You go back to our place last year. Romero literally kicked the ball away. Literally made contact with the ball. He got a red card and they got a penalty. When these decisions come about, they always favour the big teams over Tottenham Hotspur, and it fucks me off. I'm not being funny, but I don't like VAR. I really don't like VAR. I think it's ruining games. I think it's ruining games of football. I think they're getting the outcomes that they want, keeping the big teams up the top, because it only came about when the big teams didn't have the grasp on the Premier League and European football the way they once had. They were all getting into financial trouble, everything else. All of a sudden, VAR comes in. Hey, presto, they're all back up there again. I'm fed up with it. I'm sick of VAR. I'm done with it, and it's a joke.
Max Rushton, I think one big issue for Spurs at the moment is that they aren't very good. David Harris, you're David Harris, Dave, saying, peace and love to nearly everybody. Why produce the stats on Ange repeatedly? We know he's going. Focus on the owners. Don't let Ange be the diversion. Change for Spurs this Sunday. And I think you more or less said that earlier on.
That's what I've been trying to say all along, for months. Look,
for months and earlier on in the stream, sorry. Yeah,
months I've been trying to say this. It's like, I get everyone's problem with Ange Postecoglou, and we even said months ago, it's sort of like, the writing's on the wall. It's going to happen at some point. It's just how long we last in Europa League. But I do think it's creating a big distraction from the real issues inside the football club, for sure. Yeah.
Patty saying disconnected, disappointed, and disillusioned is the only way I can describe being a Spurs fan at the moment. I think people felt that way even going before the Chelsea game, unfortunately. But Dave and I really tried to get up for it. I'm still going to get up for the Frankfurt game personally, but it's one of those stages again where it's just happened season after season after season since Pochettino, where it's just we find ourselves at the end of the season just hoping for the end, and it's just something needs to give. This is my take, my opinion. I know a lot of people feel differently about this, but I have made this point before, and I do agree with Cody Mack on this. Yes, Conte scorched earth his way out of the club with his final presser, but the spirit of the message was that what the players and the club were willing to give was not good enough for the fans. I'm told he hated the fans, though. While this fraud antagonizes us weekly, it's become ridiculous. Brilliant. This is what I have said to you,
I should go in the Louvre. Hang it in the Louvre.
That's what I said to you. I've said to on stream before. I'd never really understood the narrative that Antonio Conte hated the fans more than Ange Postecoglou did. I think Ange Postecoglou has gotten it wrong on more than a couple of times, where he seems to make a real enemy out of his own fan base. Whereas Antonio Conte, to my opinion, yes, he sort of acted like, maybe at some stage he felt like he was just sort of done with the club. But he seemed to make it quite clear that he felt like that the fans of this club did not deserve what they were seeing on the pitch and what they were seeing from the players and what they were seeing from the owner. I don't remember Antonio Conte acting like the fans were the problem at the club. And Ange Postecoglou, I think, has done more of that. I think he's actually really come out and pretty much said that, you know, without maybe saying deliberately that he doesn't like this fan base and that he's done with this fan base. I did not get that vibe from Antonio Conte. I don't think, you know, Antonio Conte hated the fan base. I think he just hated the way that the players were playing for him and the way that the club, you know, sort of backed him. And I don't have much of an issue with that at the end of the day. So I don't know. It's just one of those narratives that I've always never really agreed with, that Antonio Conte somehow hated the fans more than Ange Postecoglou did. That's just the way I see it.
No, look, I think it's absolutely spot on. Like, look, a lot of people didn't like what Conte had to say, you know, and I think at the time a lot of people were like, oh, disrespecting the football club, this, that, and the other. And I think me and you came out at the time and said, hang on, no. He's trying to tell us what's gone on at the football club. You know, he's trying to say what we a lot of fans have been saying for a long time. The problem's inside, the players not giving enough, etc. You can put all the blame on me all you want, but you need to know this. Some could argue, you know, are we here again where, you know, you sort of see everything being put on Ange Postecoglou again, and maybe we have forgotten the message that maybe Conte has given us to a certain degree. But I do agree with, you know, he is antagonising the fans. Conte didn't do that.
Yeah. But people are welcome to disagree, and people are certainly welcome to come on, you know, to the Big Up Fan Show and, you know, let me know, you know, whether, you know, it's any different in Ange's case, and whether you guys do feel like Ange has more respect for the club or more respect for the fans than Conte did, and plenty of other things that we've chatted about. Just literally a minute. We might even already be a minute late at this point. We are going to be doing a Big Up recap, so follow us over, please. I'm going to put the link in the chat here, and follow us over there. You help out the channel a ton. And then, like I said, afterwards, we will be doing the Big Up Fan Show, and you can join us for that one as well. Dave, any final words from yourself here?
No, look, you know, I don't think there's anything that me, you, or anybody else can say that's going to ease the pain of the Spurs fan base. But look, you know, at the end of the day, we're still going to turn up for the games coming up. Let's see what we can do. But, you know, it's a bit of a difficult situation to be in, to be honest, because every fan's heading into the game now sort of done with Ange Postecoglou, even myself and yourself now at this point. And it's just like, it's going to be a weird experience for the next couple of games. But my big thing is let's not turn on each other. It's something that I've always tried to say for a couple of years now. It doesn't solve the problem. Going, you're the problem, we're not the problem. The club is the problem.
And we're going to be here forever.
Focus on it, yeah.
And we're going to be here forever. Ange is not here forever. Daniel Levy, you know, at the end of the day, won't be here forever. Plenty of the issues at the club are a lot higher up than the fan base. The fan base is just going to stick around no matter what. So we're not going anywhere. Plenty of you guys aren't going anywhere. So that's where I've also felt, you know, blaming the fans is, in my opinion, always just been diluted. But we'll see you later, everybody, in just a couple of seconds. So join us over there on the Big Up platform. Yeah. Thanks to everybody that's supporting the channel, anybody that even joined the stream. If you hit the like button too, please, you know, would love for you guys to do that. Just sends us out to more people. Thanks to Artist T, Martin Knightsbridge, the Big D as well for celebrating the member milestones. And yeah, just again, it helps us out a ton, but also it's just really, really lovely to see just how many people throughout the ups and downs of being a Tottenham Hotspur fan and a fan of this channel that you guys just continue to stick by us. It is very humbling, and we really do appreciate it. Yeah. And we'll see you all very, very soon in a couple of seconds time.
See you soon.